Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Northwest Geology Guy. My name is Scott Wheeler, and I'll be your host today as we talk about the Cascadia subduction zone. I know a lot of people have heard this and think they've heard everything about it, but I'd like to take you a little deeper and explain what's going on in the whole area out there so you have a better understanding of what the subduction zone does, how it acts, and how it creates hazards to us here on the West Coast. Now, the subduction zone runs from northern Vancouver Island all the way down to Cape Mendocino in Northern California. It's roughly about 700 miles. But what people don't know, that over here we have seafloor spreading centers that create more seafloor, and it pushes it out from each direction of the fracture zone. And let's take you over to another chart here. Let me move it over a little bit. There we go. And this explains to you how a seafloor spreading center works. We have down here in the mantle, we have a convection center down here that spins the heat up from the core, and it punctures through the seafloor crust and erupts lava that creates new seafloor and spreads it out in both directions. Now, that alone doesn't create too many earthquakes, but what does create the earthquakes, and let's go back over here, is where the seafloor isn't spreading but moving and grinding against each other. And that's what's causing the earthquake swarm here, a little bit in here, and down here at the triple junction zone. Now, I ran this past a good contact of mine from the CVO, the Cascadia Volcano Observatory, and he agrees with me that the swarm of quakes here, and down here do not really affect the subduction zone itself. What it is it's showing stresses on the plates, because you have the Pacific plate out here, and up here is the Explorer plate, and it's grinding against each other as it's moving, just kind of like the subduction zone. It's stuck, and as pressures build up, it will slide against each other like the San Andreas does and create quakes. Now, my contact did tell me that there is a slight possibility of a quake over there of magnitude that could cause the subduction zone to rupture, but only if it's ready to go already. But it will directly or indirectly not affect it at all. So don't worry when you hear people talking about, oh, there was a huge earthquake over on the Juan de Fuca plate. Is it going to cause the subduction zone to rupture, causing death and destruction? That's just a lot of hype. What I want to teach you is the facts, so you're better informed of what's going on in the region and assess your hazard, to where you live. But we are going to get a tsunami that will inundate the west coast here, and it will run up the river channels and estuaries, and it will even come in here to the Straits of Juan de Fuca. But as it makes the turn, most of the energy is going to be expelled when it hits inland Washington here. And so by the time it gets down into Puget Sound here, into the Seattle-Tacoma area, there probably won't be more than a few centimeters of wave height. So Seattle will not be wiped out by a tsunami from the Cascadia subduction zone. But we are going to be shaken like shake and bake for 4 to 5 minutes while the quake is rupturing. Later on, when we go more in depth on this, I'll bring up some more charts and simulations of what it looks like. The early warning earthquake system that is supposed to be designed to help us, give us warning so we can all get to a safe location. But for right now, I just wanted to teach you the facts of what's going on over here. Now, Over here on the west side of the Explorer, Juan de Fuca, and Gorda Plate is all the seafloor spreading that happens, and it doesn't happen continuously. It comes in spurts, so that's why you don't see an ongoing swarms in the area where the seafloor is grinding against the Pacific Plate or where the seafloor spreading center is. That's also called a divergence center. And over here on the subduction zone, that is called a convergence zone, where the two plates come together. And the reason why we have the three plates here subducting is that the oceanic floor is a lot denser than the continental crust. So that forces it down, deep down underneath it, and goes down into the mantle, mixes it with a little bit of seawater that seeps in through the fault and creates steam and sends up more lava and helps dissolve the crust. And that's what gives us the Cascade volcano arc from up here in BC all the way down into Northern California. Now, it's kind of amazing that the Cascades run exactly the same distance that the subduction zone is. And that is because the subducting Juan de Fuca, Explorer, and Gorda Plate are the ones that create the magma source for our volcanoes. So you're not going to get any volcanoes outside of the subduction zone area that are connected to this region. Down in California, in the Sierra Nevada range, that whole range is made up of granite. And when you have a large area of granite, scientists will use the term batholith. And all that means is it's a large quantity of granite. And all that granite down there used to be a volcano arc like our Cascades are. But what has happened is down here where the San Andreas Fault is, North America has crossed over the East Pacific Rise. So the subduction there had stopped. The volcanoes that the arc of the volcanoes down here lost their magma source, eroded away, and their magma chambers had hardened and been pushed up through tectonic forces and risen up into real beautiful mountain range. But it is no longer active. They will not erupt. But that is the future for our Cascades up here. Excuse me. That eventually when North America crosses over the subduction zone, we'll lose our magma sources for our volcanoes, and they'll eventually erode away, and we'll end up with a range of mountains just like in California, it's the Sierra Nevada range. But that's millions of years away. But another thing I'd like to talk about is turbidites. Those are seafloor samples taken. First, it was taken from some graduate students from the University of Oregon, and then later on, Dr. Chris Goldfinger. He became famous for this. He went out and took seafloor samples, core samples, in every canyon up and down the whole entire subduction zone. And he found what's called turbidites. Turbidites is a layering of sediments. Like if you took a handful of soil in your hand, threw it in a bucket of clear bucket of water, you could see that the heavier particles land first, then the smaller than the smallest. Well, when that becomes compacted, that becomes a turbidite. And he had those carbon dated and had them tested for the last 10,000 years. So it shows a series of subduction zone ruptures that occurred on the subduction zone. And also, Brian Atwater from the USGS had gone up and down the subduction zone in a canoe and gone up all these little rivers and estuaries and digging along the sea banks or the shore bank and found tsunami sands. that shouldn't be there. And as he dug down, he could see layers that didn't make sense. How you could have decaying marshlands underneath tsunami sands, which means that either the ground lowered rapidly and the seawater had rushed in, leaving a layer of tsunami sands. And he also found that when he carbon dated them, they matched the same readings that Dr. Chris Goldfinger got off the sea floor. And that's how they started hooking this together and trying to find out when was the last rupture of the subduction zone. And a Japanese scientist over in Japan had heard of Brian Atwater's work and invited him to come over and take a look at what he had found. Because the Japanese keep strict records of history. And back in 1700, they had what they deemed an orphan tsunami. Now, an orphan tsunami is a tsunami without the earthquake. That devastated Japan in January 26th of 1700. And they know the speed of the tsunami, how long it takes to get from the west coast of America to Japan, and everything was falling into place. That the last full rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone happened in January 26th, 1700 at roughly 9 o'clock p.m. So the little settlers that we did have here and the Native Americans were caught off guard. They didn't see it coming. They got shaken really hard for 4 to 5 minutes. And then after that, here comes the tsunami waves. But for you guys that live over here on the West Coast, inland, off the coast, you don't have anything to worry about a tsunami coming in and wiping out your town and killing everyone, unless you live on the coast. Because what's going to happen when the subduction zone ruptures, immediately the ground is going to drop about 30, 40 feet and go out into the ocean. Now, there are different measurements. The closer you are to the subduction zone, the further west you'll travel. But as you get more to the east of the state, like say in Ellensburg, they may only move 6 inches to the west. But if you live along the coastal community like that, you can expect during a full rupture of the Cascadia to immediately sink and be thrown to the west. Now, in towns like Westport, Ocean Shores, stuff like that, that's going to be underwater because it's going to drop down and go out to sea and will be inundated with seawater until the process starts all over again and it locks up again and starts creating more uplift on the crustal coast. We'll bring those lands back above water. But I just wanted to go over a few things with you here, show you a little different diagrams here of how the mantle material comes up to the seafloor, spreading centers, how the Juana Fuca, Gorda, and Explorer Plate subduct underneath North America. And right here you can see how the continental crust dips down here. It's kind of like in a toenailing effect. And that's because it's locked and the subducting plate here is catching it and dragging it down. Now, just a little spoiler alert for my more in-depth video on this will be coming, but not right away. But we're going to be talking about the slow earthquakes that occur in along the subduction zone. Or they call it ETS for the episodic tremor slip. And what that is, how often does it occur, and how does it affect the Northwest. Thank you very much. Please subscribe for further videos. Remember to hit the little bell so you get an update when I upload another video. And please like and share it with your friends. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.